For those of you floating around, you do not want to miss this session. It's called Living the Dream in Silicon Valley. I don't think there's could be more provocatively titled and amorphous kind of session name. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, actually. So thanks a lot, Shubert. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and then kind of pass the mic down so we can give you a little about our bios and kind of where we come from. So I do work for a company called Axiom Zen. It was actually founded by a fellow, I'm not Persian, but he's Persian. So most importantly, I work for him. Basically, it's a technology incubator, not in the YC mode where the ideas and the team is sourced externally, but it's an incubator more in the Idea Labs kind of expo mode where the ideas we create ourselves and we kind of want to build a team. So it's more of a company builder model. So you see a lot of the merging, it's not a new idea, but that type of model, you see a lot more kind of merging companies doing that lately. Expa, Garrett Camps, kind of Uber companies, it's just done that recently. Kevin Rose and Google Ventures has launched North, which is kind of the same model, their own ideas with their own teams and things. So we have like 3 public projects that we launched. Routific, which is kind of a route optimization service. It's powering a lot of the delivery companies in Canada and North America. ZenHub, which is kind of a collaboration tool for GitHub users. And then soon to launch Timeline.com, which we think will be like the most important news app in the world. So these are 3 of our public projects right now. And like my role is typically kind of anything they need from the business side. That could be, it could be from their CMO in one case to a partnership head, anything, or introduce them to investors here as they kind of come out of launch mode and go into fundraising mode. Louder, okay. And then with that, I'm gonna kind of go in this order. My right to your left, quick intros, what you're doing now.
Okay, it's working. So my name is Fallon Fatemi. I started working at Google when I was 19 years old, so I was one of the youngest employees of the company. I was at Google for a total of 6 years in a variety of roles focused on global expansion, Google.org, the philanthropic arm of the company, and driving strategic partnerships at YouTube. I spent the last 5 years in the startup world as a business development executive for startups, doing strategy consulting for startups and VCs, and I've been advising a lot of different companies, everything from drones to infrastructure to custom fashion. I now have my own company backed by NEA, Mark Cuban, Felicious, creator of Zappos, and many other investors. We are currently in stealth, so you won't be hearing much about that. But yeah.
We'll see. We'll get it out of her by the end of the session. If you guys got any tips for me on how to get secrets out of a Persian woman, just throw them my way. She refuses to talk about what she's working on. Okay.
My name is Shahram. I've been in the startup world for about 10 years now. I started out as an attorney and worked in finance for a few years as well. And I've had 2 companies over the last 5 years in tech and biotech, so I can happily speak about the distinction between those 2 fields and would love to answer any questions.
Hey everyone, my name is Daniel Bruslovsky and I lead digital initiatives for the Golden State Warriors, and I'm also one of the co-founders of a startup called iMoji. I'm born and raised in Silicon Valley, so I grew up in the tech scene, spent the last 8 years working with startups and a VC firm, and just absolutely love what's possible when you have a lot of smart people who just come together and build something.
Excellent. So all kidding aside, we do know what we're talking about today. So other than one of the things, I want to get a quick audience segmentation here. So how many of you guys are actually in Silicon Valley, like live here and work here right now? Okay. And keep your hands up if you're a first-time entrepreneur. Okay. So a lot of you guys are existing entrepreneurs, already founded a company, started a company, founding team? Yeah. Exploring, okay. For those of you that didn't raise your hand, what brought you guys here? What are you guys doing? Just friends of Shubert? Good coffee? Okay. Okay, that's good. So I think the one thing we want to do is give you a good insight. There's certainly copious amount of information about the Valley Life, raising money, growth hacking. There's blogs about how to write a blog. And I think what we can get from this group is 3 folks, including myself, that spend an exorbitant amount of time kind of in the Valley doing a lot of different things, a lot of different perspectives. So while this session is called Living the Dream, Fallon actually said, no, I want to tell them about the nightmare too. There's a lot of kind of stories, whether it be financial, relationship, the toll it takes to kind of start a company. So we kind of want to give you some insight into that, take your questions. even if it's things on like networking or fundraising, anything like that. So we'll kind of leave it open there. But the one thing that we all have in common is we all took very circuitous routes to becoming in a startup role. I started an enterprise. While my friends were getting jobs at Google, funny naming companies like Google and Yahoo in the late 90s, we were laughing at them. I took a job in IBM. I thought like that was the way. Like, you know, I made my parents proud. By the time I was ready to do the startup world, I joined my first startup, which was an internet browse, IE Explorer competitor, which is probably the dumbest idea. No investor wanted to give us money. I joined in April 2000, basically 3 days before the complete meltdown of the first boom. You know, this is basically when it bust. And I was out of a job, you know, I left IBM and I was out of a job in the startup within 3 months. And I said, screw that, I hate startups. And I went back and worked for a company called Intel. So, you know, for me, it took another almost 5 years, about 2006, 2007, until I realized there was another boom coming. And that's when I said to myself, I'm going to give it a real earnest effort this time, invest myself, really network. Didn't know anyone in the scene, and basically dove myself into startups. Since then, like I said, I've been with some startups that raised a lot of money, been pretty high profile. And it's, for me, it's become more of a lifestyle than a job, just everything environmental about it. But for me, there's no blueprint. There was no one when I was starting that said, you know, do X, Y, and Z and get you there. I think it's a lot of it's belief and kind of your personal belief system, what you want out of how you spend your time at work, and that's kind of what brought me to the startup world. We can dive in a little more about that, but kind of want to start with Daniel. Daniel's our millennial here, our token millennial. Daniel's only 22, but he's like lived a life in startups already. So like, I don't know, like how did it happen for you? Like, was there a mentor, or was there something you just kind of saw and believed in? Like, you were the youngest writer at TechCrunch, like at 15. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was just being in the right place at the right time, but a lot of it has to do with my parents. So my parents immigrated to the U.S. in '91, right before I was born, from what was then still considered Soviet Russia, now known as Ukraine. So if it wasn't for them moving to, of all places, San Francisco, none of this would have ever happened to me. So that's why I say, you know, part of it is being in the right place at the right time. My parents picked the right place at the right time to go to, and then I came out, and the rest is kind of history. But for me, it's, you know, from a very early age, both my parents work in tech. My mom works at Oracle. My dad works at a company called WageWorks, and they're both technical. So I grew up around technical parents working in pretty technical companies. So it was something that I just grew up watching, and just it fascinated me so much. And I've always been pretty curious as a person, so when my dad was working at night, I'd ask him, like, so how does, you know, what are you doing, and how does this work, and all this stuff, and we would take apart computers and put them back together and all this stuff, and he was working at a company in 2006 called Remend, which made software for banks. They're not around anymore, but, and I used to go to their office after school, and I had my own desk there, and I'd do Hello? There we go. And I would do my homework there, and one day the CFO came up to me and he said, look, you're here every single day. We might as well give you something to do. And so he started giving me some projects, and that turned into me kind of discovering the power of the internet. And speaking of mentors, Robert Scoble, who's kind of a big name in tech, kind of took me under his wing and introduced me to a lot of people and started taking me to events in the Valley. And the next thing you know, it's kind of a monopoly where you meet one person, they introduce you to 2 people, who then introduce you to 4 people, who then introduce you to 8 people, and before you know it, you get to meet people like Spencer and Fallon and Chaubert and all these people. And it's like, if it wasn't for me being in Silicon Valley and just really, you know, living the lifestyle, not necessarily, you know, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I want to do X, Y, and Z. It's like a lot of this is just so serendipitous that it's not something that you can just plan and it'll happen. And it was just really being in the right place at the right time and being lucky and really just wanting to do it.
Yeah, sounds like finding that first right mentor was kind of a critical path.
Definitely.
So how old were you then? Like 8 years old, 9 years old when all this happened?
3.
3? Okay.
Yeah.
Next to Sharon, Sharon's very interesting. Went to a top law school, worked at a top law firm, left all that to do a startup. You must have broke your Persian parents' hearts. What were you thinking?
I think I did. Well, so I agree with what everyone has said in the sense that there's no path to entrepreneurship. And in fact, I don't even necessarily recommend it, to be honest, in the sense that there's no heroism in it per se. I think you should do what you love, whether it's a lawyer or janitor or a doctor, whatever. There's honor in every profession in my personal view. I did it because I felt like I really had no option but to do it. So when I was working in a law firm, this was in 1999, the same year that I think, very close to the year that you went to your company, the dot-com boom was happening, and there was quite a bit of hype in the Valley. And I'd studied economics, so I was familiar with bubbles, and I was walking around my law firm telling my partners we're in the middle of a bubble in 1999 while I was taking companies public as an attorney with one of my colleagues, Tudaj Padang is also here. He was at Wilson with me. And I remember the partner walked around, telling me to go back to my cave. He said, go back to your cave, you bear, because I was a bear on the market. But of course, a few months later, everything fell apart. The reality is, people were starting companies left and right back then. They're doing it again now. There's this kind of glamour in Silicon Valley to starting your own company. I frankly don't believe that much in the hype and in the facade of entrepreneurship. I think it's much more about the hard work behind it and your passion and what differentiates you. Starting a company is extremely easy. All you do is go to a lawyer, they incorporate a company, and you're a founder. But I think making a difference is extremely difficult. So let me actually ask the audience here, who wants to start a company in the next 5 years? Okay, so we have a good number.
You poor souls. You poor souls.
And let me ask, for one of the brave souls who wants to start a company, ask us a question that's on your mind about how hard it would be to do it, because I think that's the most interesting way for us to interact with this audience. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about my own background, to be honest with you, unless you have a question about it.
Oh, yeah. For some of you, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so
ask any question. We will give you the actual honest truth, especially Fallon here.
Because it's a lot harder than you think to start a company, and getting into a relationship with your co-founder is like being in a marriage. Do you have a co-founder in your company? Okay, so you're a single mom, single founder of a company, basically. Yeah, well, even that's very isolating and lonely, so tell us about that a little bit.
Oh my God, I don't even want to dwell on that. I guess piggybacking on what you were saying, at the end of the day, you shouldn't start a company because you want to be an entrepreneur. You should, for me, it was about wanting to solve this problem and feeling like I was the right person to solve this problem. And the vehicle in which to do that was starting a company. I would never put myself through this otherwise, because there's nothing glamorous about it. There's nothing, there's so many challenges. So, I mean, from my perspective, being a single founder, it's even harder doing it on your own. And I've been lucky enough to have a great network, to be able to recruit a great team that can support me. But, yeah.
I saved all the pessimistic questions for you, so I wanted Fallon to be the voice of pessimism here. It hasn't been easy for me in startups. It's been up and down, sometimes financially. It's been up and down relationship-wise. So, and I did find there was some people that should maybe, I've had friends that came from the enterprise world or younger friends I got introduced to that say, oh, I kind of want to do this. I want to throw myself into it. Should I do it? And there's been some advice I give them, yes, eventually, but not right now. I mean, there's a lot of things you got to kind of get in order. You have to have the right platform at home, that kind of thing. So I want to ask you, it's not doing it, but is there profiles of people in their lives that maybe should hold off, and maybe they're not ready for it now, or maybe it's just more kind of research for them? I'll give you an example. I don't think they have a supportive person at home that's going to put up with those hours. I think it's exceedingly tough to make a relationship and a startup thing work, right? You have any ideas on who should not jump into it right now?
Yeah, if you're not comfortable with ambiguity, you should definitely not work at a startup. There's so much data that you don't have, and you have to be able to feel comfortable to make decisions without having that data. There's no real plan that you can put into place and try and follow, because you need to be nimble, especially earlier on. I mean, there's not enough talk about finding product market fit. Starting a company is very easy, but finding product market fit is really hard, and that is where the majority of companies fail. And what product market fit means is basically building a product that really resonates with your set of users. And depending on what market you're in, you're held to some pretty tough standards on what those metrics translate to. Yeah,
that's good. Trump?
I'll add something as well. So we're here in Silicon Valley generally with the kind of internet and the software space. It's very different than biotech and healthcare. And I'll say that, we have some really admirable and fantastic founders here on stage who are very young. You just won't find that in biotech for drug discovery. You will actually not get funded if you're under 40. generally speaking, if you're trying to build a therapeutics for cancer. And those are things that you learn kind of the hard way if you haven't done it before. So I have a company in New York. We're developing drugs for cancer. These are co-founders of mine from Harvard, MIT, when I was in law school at Harvard. Very, very bright guys. We've had a dozen publications in Nature and Cell about our therapeutics. But one of the things that we get asked a lot is that our team is very young. We're all kind of under 40. I'm actually now 40, but the rest are under 40. So that's actually a problem in that space. So no matter how smart you are, people have a bias against you because you're too young. It's the exact opposite in software. People here will fund almost anything by a teenager because it's a teenager starting a company, in essence. And that's just kind of the ethos of the Valley. And the track records may or may not reflect success depending on your age, but what matters more is, as you said, the product market fit, the hard blocking and tackling of being successful. And anyone who started a company has been through that. Can we take some questions from the audience? I'd love to see if there's, for someone who wants to start a company, what's the top question you have? Let's try to answer that. Who wants to start a company? Okay, so you have one question about what it would be like? When is the right time? Excellent question. So if you're financially stressed, don't start a company because you'll go many, many months, maybe years without having an income that's adequate. I don't recommend buying a home when you're in the middle of starting a company or getting into necessarily a new relationship. The right time is the right time for you. If you're in the biotech industry, drug discovery, you should have a lot of expertise before you jump out and start something. If you're in software, the younger the better. Because as Fallon was saying, the product market fit equation and the iterations necessary for that require a lot of agility, and I actually find that younger people are a little bit better at that. So as an investor, I would invest in younger people starting software companies, but older people doing drug discovery, for example.
You want to say something?
So I think the right time is definitely when you are so obsessed with a problem and you just can't get it out of your head and you need to do something about it. You need to take action on it. And I wasn't in the best financial situation when I started my company, but that didn't deter me from pursuing the problem space that I was very passionate about. And what I very much realized once I sort of got to that time was that everything I was doing up until that point led me to start a company in that space. So all the data is actually there. It's just a matter of you kind of connecting the dots and being at that right time to make those realizations and say, okay, I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah. I'll kind of wrap up this section on that point, which is, so out of all four of us here, I'm the only one that's never been a founder, and that's by design. And related to everything Fallon just said is like, you better love your idea because you can't walk out of it. Me, I've been an early operator. I'm the first guy either running marketing or BD for a lot of these founders. But you know what? When I don't believe it anymore, I can walk away from it, and the founders can. So keep that in mind. It's massive. It's like, I think back to some of my founder friends, still kind of in that tier 2, tier 3 space, trying to make it. They have no options. They got to see this thing through. No one. They should just sometimes give the money back.
Yeah, the reality is that not every single company launches and then gets bought by Facebook or Twitter. I mean, the reality is that most companies, it's like the overnight success is a 10-year journey. The reality is that most companies take 5, 10, 15 years for there to be any success. So unless you're ready to devote that time, then you're probably not going to be cut out for this journey because it's one hell of a long journey.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, yeah, question, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. In case you guys didn't hear it, she was asking she has a full-time job, she's got all these ideas she's really passionate about, she wants to see if she could still do her startup on the side. I actually do recommend that. I think it's really important that you if you are in a stable place and you're working a nice 9 to 5, you have plenty of time outside of work to dedicate yourself whatever you're passionate about. And there's a lot of successful entrepreneurs that did just that. I think Drew at Dropbox, he started Dropbox while he was still working at Picasa 9. And it was, once he got to a point where he's like, all right, I need to focus on this 100%, that's when he left. The main thing you just have to worry about are any IP issues around that, which the lawyer on the panel can talk about that. So you want to make sure that you sort of protect yourself in that manner. But I highly recommend, whether you're in a stable job or not, if you have a problem, an industry vertical, or any kind of passion on some sort of a problem, that you go and you pursue it. It took me many years to figure out what I wanted to pursue. I realized later on that that all the data was there. Everything I was doing led me to this point. But it's important that you expose yourself to all